Hi everyone, Summer with Astaria Sen, and I want to talk to you today about fairy stuff. Mainly like some fairy secrets that I found out about while I was doing some fairy reading and some other little tidbits that I've come across along the way. So basically this is going to be a video about all the interesting things I have been reading about fairies. I'm sticking this video specifically to things I learned, not things that I already knew, just things I learned as I was reading these books. These books are also not modern books. So one of them is the Reverend Kirk, Robert Kirk, and it's got an introduction by Andrew Lang. This is from the Reverend Kirk is from the 1690s. His manuscript is, and Andrew Lang is from the 1890s, and he's doing he's kind of like going through and breaking down some of Reverend Kirk's stuff in his papers about it, in his manuscript, you could say, about it. But there was a lot of information in this book. It's the first book I read that actually specifically stated in here that fairies don't like human food, like bread, and they would put bread underneath the cribs. Or that they were not okay with iron, like if they were touched by iron, they would vanish, and stuff like that. This is the first book of anything that I've read that has had that. I mean, other than folklore stories, right? But I'm not reading this for folklore. Well, specifically for like fairy tales. I'm reading it for very, very specific stuff. The other thing I had to note about these books is a lot of them included ghost stories, hauntings, and anything supernatural. Anything supernatural back in this time was considered fairy, basically. And the belief in it was there because of that. And that includes, your loved ones coming back from the dead, ancestors, ghosts, actual ghosts, brownies, dwarves, little people, anything like that. And anything supernatural, including like sightseeing and everything else, divination, all fell into fairy stuff. So what I found interesting about this, right, it's Reverend Kirk, by the way, and he was respected in his community and by his parishioners. And what he would do is he did believe in fairies, and he wanted people to see them not as demons, right? Not as something evil, as the church was pressuring so much. But the thing about that is if somebody off the street just says fairies aren't evil, fairies exist, it's one thing, right? But a reverend walks up to you and says, by the way, fairies exist and they're not evil. There's a difference in how that's perceived, right? And that is actually mentioned in this book. So anyways, back to what I was talking about, because I might go off topic, guys. This is fairy stuff. I might go off topic. Just, fast forward if you don't want to listen to whatever I'm talking about. Anyways, the one thing that I learned from this book that I really wanted to point out was that Reverend Kirk was the seventh son. Seventh sons were perceived as people with more supernatural abilities, like foresight or being able to heal, etc. It was a seventh son thing. So I find it interesting that Reverend Kirk was the seventh son. And that's one of the things, one of the big things that I learned in here. A lot of this book is really just talking about breaking down Reverend Kirk's manuscript and the different meanings, and it actually pertains a lot more to witchcraft than what I was expecting. Now, I'm going to leave the titles of these books down in the description. I cannot just leave you links because these are older books. You're going to have to find them from used places. You could try getting them on Kindle if you want. I cannot attest to how well they're going to read or how well edited they're going to be or anything like that. So just know that I can't guarantee that, okay? But anyway, so this is the first one. Again, 1690s, right? That's when this manuscript was done by Reverend Kirk, talking about the fairies. He was very scientific. He wasn't wishy-washy about it or anything like that. He took a very realistic scientific approach, and he did believe, and he thought they were just a part of nature, okay? So then we're going to move forward, okay? And we have these two books right here. Again, Reverend Kirk was very respected in his community, okay? We move into, I think Yeats would be the next one. Yeats was from this book is 1865. Okay, and then I think this one was 1890s, which technically Lang was the 1890s too, but I was going off the Reverend's manuscript, not specifically Lang only. So anyways, the next one I'm going to go to is Yeats. Yeats had a strong belief in fairies, and he was very enamored by seances and stuff like that. So yes, there's some ghost stories in here, several actually. And this is called the Celtic Twighlight, the Celtic Twighlight, Fairy, and Folklore, okay? Now, Yeats, interestingly enough, okay, if you don't know much about Yeats, he was a Nobel Prize winner in Sweden. So he is also well respected in his community. He also held the head seat in the Senate in 1923. His family was Protestant, by the way, but his mother was a seer. How interesting is that? It's very, very interesting, especially since in this book I learned most of the time women weren't gifted with that. At least they didn't think women were gifted with that. Men were more often gifted than women. But his mother, Yeats' mother, was gifted. So I found that very interesting too. So anyways, we're going to move on to some fairy secrets and fairy stuff that I found very interesting in Yeats' books. Okay, so the first one I'm going to go with is called ragweed. I don't know what ragweed is. I had to look it up. Okay, but anyways, one of the things is that ragweed, according to this story that's in here, which is called Belief and Unbelief, was said to be sacred to the fairies. And in the story, there is a little girl who has gone missing, and the guy, seeking the girl is saying, burn the ragweed because the ragweed is sacred to the fairies and she'll come back. And she's like 3 years old or something, like 3 or 4 years old. And they burnt all the ragweed and the girl was returned. So I found that very interesting. I didn't know ragweed had anything to do with fairies at all, but this is the first time I've heard of that. So I found ragweed very unique. The next one is, okay, a lot of times people ask, well, if you don't want fairies, how do you get rid of fairies? And everybody is very quick to jump to iron and, doing more harsher things to get them to go away. But here, even in this book, it says, you have only to bid them be gone and they will go. That's it. Just tell them to go away and they will go. I always just heard use iron, make sure you have iron in your house and they won't come in and stuff like that. So I find it interesting that there's more to it than that. Like that not everybody believed that iron was the only way to make them go away or to make them not bother you. So I found that extremely interesting. Okay. Let's see what's next. Oh, here's the fairy secret. Okay, so the fairy secret one is my favorite one that I've learned so far from Yeats. So I always thought like hagstones, fairy stones, they're the stones that have holes in them, usually by water. Water causes a natural hole because it wears the rocks down. And you can spy, supernatural things through the hole, oftentimes fairyland or fairies, right? Well, in this book specifically, it's talking about, in the story, the guy uses an actual bone that has a hole in it, a natural hole in it. And by using this bone, he can see fairy secrets, like there's secret treasure or secrets that are going on around him. And I found that so cool because it never occurred to me that any natural, hole in something like wood, bone, anything like any natural hole, I never considered that any natural hole would be considered site to fairies. I never considered that. And it blew my mind a little bit. Like maybe it shouldn't have, really thinking about it, it shouldn't have, but it did. Okay, so fairy secrets. You want to see some fairy secrets? Find something with a natural hole in it, a piece of wood, a piece of bone, a rock, whatever, and then you can go off and look for your fairy secrets. Okay, how interesting is that? Okay, the last one in this book is people who see the fairies most often, people who are gifted by the fairies more often, are poor people, people who have an inner strength in them that can be seen, that beyond of a normal person, right? They have a lot of inner strength. They've gone through a lot. They're not people who are really haughty or really well off or anything like that. It's not to say that that doesn't happen, but in these specific stories back then, most of the time, the people who did see fae were the ones who weren't well off. They were the poorer, and they were often gifted by the fae because of that and because of their respect to the fae as well. So the fae liked their inner strength and rewarded that inner strength as well. So very interesting stuff. Obviously, there is more to these books than just what I'm giving you, but that's a lot to go into. There's a lot in some of these books that I really have to break down, so I'm not ready to go there yet. I just wanted to give you things that I've learned. The last one I'm going to go with, okay, is Jeremy Curtin. Now, Jeremy Curtin is a Smithsonian Institute ethnographer, okay? This, again, you know, you're talking about 1890s, I believe it was for Jeremiah. Sorry. I don't know why I keep wanting to say Jeremy, but it's Jeremiah. 1895. Yeah, 1895. So, this one has a lot of stories in it. A lot of them are ghosts. This whole back half of the book is pretty much ghost stories, which is fine. There's, you know, lots to be found in ghost stories too, depending on what you're looking for. But it has a lot more in it that has to do with supernatural knowledge, belief, and stuff like that. Like this quote, "It is believed firmly that there is a compensation for all this supernatural knowledge and for everything out of the usual course of things." And there's just little things all over the place that I kind of just like made mention of, you know, that in here, like the cunning, it actually comes from Fae. That is said in here to come from the Fae. And it's passed down in family generations, which I thought was really interesting. Not just but as a blessing, but also as a curse from the Fae. Like, if you do something and they give you something, that could be a curse on your family as well. There's even a story about a girl whose mother wanted her daughter to live like a Fae, like a long time, right? And so she had to do certain things to make that happen. It's like 700 years, and she went through 7 different husbands before somebody was able to put her basically out of her misery, you know, because she couldn't do it herself, and she knew how, but nobody would do it, right? And she had to get to the 7 part, the 7 husband, 700 years kind of thing. And she only got a new husband every 700 years. So 7's a big deal. Okay, 7's a big deal. But anyways, these were fun stories to read. They were interesting. This one right here, you know, Jeremiah went to a tavern basically, or like a hotel kind of back then in Ireland, and just had people just came to him to listen to villagers. He just sat there to listen to villagers recount stories, their fairy stories, and oftentimes it was ghost related fairy stories. Okay, so that was really a really interesting read. So this one is Irish Tales of the Fairies and the Ghost World by Jeremiah Curtin. And again, I will leave these down in the description. So this was fun. There's a lot more to these books, like a ton more to these books than what I'm even showing you. Like I kind of want to do like a walkthrough with you guys of the stuff that I found in the books, like actually showing you my annotations and stuff like that. I think that would be really fun. And I can like maybe go deeper into some of the stuff that I was thinking about when I did those annotations. But I also want to reread some of them and add more to it, because some of these books, like for example, The Elves, Fauns and Fairies by Robert Kirk, there is a ton in here. Like, there's some deep stuff in here. Like, it's noteworthy enough for like college student work kind of stuff. And there's just a lot to really dive into. And I feel like it needs another read from me. It needs more time in my brain to sit and be, and I need to break it down a little bit further, and maybe just in smaller chunks, because I was reading in bigger chunks, and that worked for the other 2 books, right? But this one was a lot harder to do that with because there was so much going on. Andrew Lang was actually, you know, going through Reverend Kirk's stuff and explaining some of it and diving into it in different ways. And it was brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Okay. So up next for me, the one I'm getting ready to work on is going to be this giant tomb of fairy stuff. It's the Fairy Faith in Celtic Countries, okay? The classic study of leprechauns, pixies, and other fairy spirits. And it's by W.Y. Evans. Okay? And this one is not as, you know, as far back as the others. Okay? It's not as far back as the others. This one is from the 90s. 1990 is when this one first became published. So, but you can see how much is in here. There's a lot. So this is going to take me some time, but once I get through it, I will do again some things I've learned from it and do another video on that. So let me know if you enjoyed this video. I would really like to know if this is something you would like to see more on my channel, or if there's anything else that you want to know about some of these books, just let me know and I will do my best to get you that information. So again, down in the description, I will have these books available, you know, for you to see, and you can look them up on your own. So I hope you guys have a very great day.